What's up YouTube, how goes it? In today's video, we're having a look at the ASUS VivoBook 14 Flip. I know it's a mouthful, but not too long ago, we had a look at the VivoBook 15. This one right here, not only is it a whole 1 inch smaller in screen size, it's actually a 2-in-1 laptop, meaning it can convert into a hybrid tablet. Of course, the configuration we have here is rocking the latest AMD internals, at least at the time of this video. So the Ryzen 5500U processor, 12 GB of DDR4 RAM. We also have a 500 GB solid state drive powered by Radeon integrated graphics. Also, we do have the latest Wi-Fi and Bluetooth standards. Furthermore, it's worth noting, as I mentioned earlier, this is a 14-inch full touch captive display. And in today's video, we're going to see if this laptop has what it takes to compete in an already fiercely competitive mid-range 2-in-1 market, or if it's going to kick the bucket. In any case, we're going to find out all those things and answer hopefully all of your questions. As always, if you enjoy the content, hit that like button, sub to my channel. I don't bite, you might just end up liking the channel. So welcome, let's get started. From an unboxing perspective, the VivoBook comes in a pretty standard looking cardboard box, as they hired probably a high school intern for creativity who added a couple of lines that look like a bunch of V's for Vivo, I guess. Anyway, once you proceed to actually removing the content seal itself and opening up the box, inside you'll find a few items. First and foremost, and a bunch of protective packaging, the VivoBook itself. Once you remove all the packaging, here it is in that midnightish blue type color, which I personally like, and you have this fancy sticker with a bunch of specifications, but more on the laptop in a minute. Beyond that, of course, you have a 2-in-1 65-watt charging adapter. It's nice because it's just one piece, so we don't have to separate the two pieces. Also, it is proprietary, so unfortunately no USB-C charging out of the box. Sigh. Finally, of course, you have the instruction manual, quick start guide, and warranty information, you know, all the stuff you don't want to read. But there is a pleasant surprise behind that. You have this paper envelope, and inside here, you actually have a bunch of really cool stickers. And ASUS actually includes this with a lot of their products, including their budget entry-level VivoBooks as well, which is a welcome touch. From a design perspective, the VivoBook has a very subtle and reserved look, almost like a Lenovo's theme. I personally like this. I like the fact that you have the VivoBook branding on the right corner, no flashy text or fonts. It's just pretty straightforward. Also, that midnight bluish color looks quite nice. At 3.3 pounds, this is definitely not the lightest laptop in the market, but it comes pretty close to Ultrabook levels in terms of weight category, and it should be okay for all-day carry around. Now, starting from the top side, you do have this nice metallic finish. There isn't really any particular texture over here, which again, I personally like. It's just a flat, smooth finish. You also have these metallic hinges that again look really nice and are color matched with the rest of the body of the laptop. I/O port diversity on this laptop is actually pretty robust, but somewhat questionable at the same time. So on one side, you have a rather dated USB 2.0 port. Seriously, come on ASUS. You do also have a heat exhaust vent right next to it, which is a good thing because heat doesn't come popping out of the top of the screen. Good job. On the other side, you have this hideous proprietary charging port or DC port. Right next to that, however, you have a full-sized HDMI port, a USB 3.2 Type A port, a USB Type C port, the good old headphone jack, and you also have a micro SD card reader, which is a welcome addition. Lastly, you do have the power button on the side as well. The bottom of the laptop is some pretty standard stuff. So on the very top corner, you'll notice you have the air intake vents to keep the laptop running nice and cool. It is a hard TPU finish. At the bottom, you have a couple of screws, so the lid does come off for upgradability options. Also, you'll notice you have a couple rubber grips. And lastly, you'll notice these two speaker grills on either side, indicating this is a bottom firing speaker with a stereo speaker setup. As soon as you unfold this laptop, you get your first whiff of cheapness. So what I mean is that the entire inner chassis is made of flimsy plastic, but that's still forgivable. The trackpad is one of the biggest disappointments on this laptop. So it has a hard TPU or plastic finish, which again in itself is okay at this price range, but the minute you use it, literally it feels like you're clicking 3 times anytime you click on this laptop. The plastic is so flimsy and cheap, and there is a bare amount of flex on this actual trackpad. Honestly, you may as well make a trampoline out of it. It's just absurd. Also, you'll notice that the calibration on the left and right side is pretty poorly done, so you have to click pretty much on the corners for the click to register. Thankfully, you do have a fingerprint scanner on the top right side of the trackpad, and that does work pretty much as intended. Now, as far as the keyboard goes, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that it's better than the trackpad. The bad news is that it's mediocre at best. So the keycap layout is is actually quite respectable. You'll find the keycaps are nice and spacious, and you won't be making a lot of typos, and it's pretty sturdy as well. But the minute you start typing, you start feeling the hollowness of the keystrokes. So there's little to no tactileness, there's very little key travel, and also it just feels like a finicky and shallow experience. Typing on this keyboard is not fun, especially when you compare it to some of this competition like the Flex 5, for example. Now, to make matters even worse, ASUS decided to cheap out further and not include any backlighting on this keyboard. Honestly, any keyboard that's priced more than $450 USD, it should be a crime for it to not have backlighting in 2021. It's not an expensive functionality to add anymore, and there's just little to no excuse for it. Now keep in mind, this is a 14-inch laptop, meaning you don't get a dedicated 10 keypad, which is quite normal for most 14-inch machines. Cheer up, however, because the hinge quality on this laptop is quite nice. So you do have a 2-tier hinge system, and for the most part it's sturdy, which it should be because this display can technically tilt up to 360 degrees and become a tablet. Of course, another thing worth noting is that there is a little bit of wobble, but it's within the margin of acceptability. Now, you do have a relatively thick chin on this laptop, but it actually has this premium feel thanks to the high gloss look it gives. Also, the bezels are narrow enough to meet 2021 standards and give it a nice sleek look. Again, you do have a relatively thick forehead, which also encompasses the mediocre 720p webcam, which is about as miserable as every other webcam in the PC industry right now, and does pretty bad in low light settings. In brighter settings, however, it's okay. The display on this machine is a bit of a mixed bag. So starting off with the good stuff, you do have a modest resolution of Full HD or 1080p, and at a 14-inch screen size, the screen density looks very crisp and clear, generally speaking. Also, you have a standard 60Hz refresh rate, but perhaps one of the best things of the display is its fantastic viewing angle. ASUS claims you get a 178-degree viewing angle, and I wouldn't contest that. Honestly, you can look at it from any tilt, it looks just fine. Now, where things start getting gloomy is the fact that you only have a color accuracy of 45% NTSC. That means that colors are relatively washed out and bland. They lack vividness. If you are a creative user that relies heavily on color accuracy for, let's say, photo or video editing, for example, you will not find that on the display. But perhaps the worst attribute of this display has to be its 215 nits peak brightness level. Now, for most indoor settings, that should be okay, but if you are in a super well lit room, or if you're going to use this outdoors where you have a little bit of sun coming, there's just so much reflection on the screen and not enough brightness to compensate for it, so it in some cases becomes a near non-viable experience in those kind of environments. Keeping in mind that this is a 2-in-1 laptop, meaning you do have a full touch captive screen that can be used as a tablet, I'm happy to report that this machine does just fine in tablet mode. I do find the touch captivity a little bit more on the sensitive side, but that's more of a personal thing. I generally found that no matter what you're doing, you have little to no latency, and even though I used my fingers, you can also get the ASUS Stylus Pen for a much more productive experience, but overall I would highly recommend the touch captivity of this laptop. In terms of performance, keeping in mind that this is a mid-spec machine, the 5500U does a pretty good job at running most day-to-day tasks as you'd expect, whether that's web browsing or watching a YouTube video. It'll be super fast and snappy. Even when you push this laptop to its limits, like let's say doing video editing, for example, you'll find that if you're in 1080p video editing, it's a buttery smooth experience. Even 4K video editing is theoretically possible, but you do start getting a fair bit of frame drops and a little bit of lag at that level of intensity. That 12 gigabytes of RAM definitely helps though, because it allows to overcompensate for some of the stuff the processor can't keep up with. Now, with that said, gaming on this machine is an okay experience. So I found that games like GTA 5 generally run 30 plus FPS at low settings. However, if you start pushing it any higher than that, as you expect of an integrated graphics card, you do start running into a fair bit of, again, frame drops. The Iris Xe chip is a little bit better with a lot of the games I've tested so far, so that's one advantage I will give to Intel over there. For that one person who's just dying to know about thermals, I've got you covered. So at its absolute peak load, this laptop can hit an average surface temperature of approximately 43 degrees Celsius, but under more realistic mid to high loads, you'll find you get a sustained temperature of about 36 to 37 degrees Celsius. However, under idle to low loads, you can go as little as 22 degrees Celsius. All in all, this is a relatively cool running machine. Now, in terms of fan noise, you can hit a peak noise level of 41 decibels, but this is pretty rare and only happens when you're doing something like non-stop gaming, and only comes in bits and pieces. Other than that, this is a very quiet machine. You can hardly hear the fan most of the time. In terms of battery life, the VivoBook 14 Flip isn't anything to write home about. So I found on average at 50% brightness, doing moderately intensive activities like web browsing, watching some videos, and using the onboard speakers, I got about 8 hours of battery life on average. This can vary a little bit depending on the activities. Also, it's worth noting you cannot charge this machine using the USB-C port included, so you can only charge with the proprietary DC port. Furthermore, for those of you who are interested in the speaker quality of this machine, you'll be happy to know it's actually quite pleasing to the ears. So while not the most crisp or loudest, it's well balanced for a mid-range machine. Have a quick listen for yourself.
Get in my way and I'm stabbing. I'll be moving crowds till I'm 6 feet napping. They need another fix, hooked on like an addict. I got my eyes on the prize and it's changing lives. I wanna live till I die, make a difference right. I wanna give those in need a reason to fight. I wanna live every day like it's my last night. I wanna change how we play the game. Rearrange all the pieces till they say my name. Push an agenda against doing what they say.
So here's the power summary, guys. At approximately $730 USD, the ASUS VivoBook Flip 14 is what I consider to be a pretty average laptop. It doesn't try to do its absolute best to be as competitive as possible, but at the same time, I wouldn't call it a bad value either. So you have to keep a couple things in mind. First and foremost, of course, this is a 2-in-1 machine, so you are getting hybrid or tablet mode functionality at a relatively cheap price. Now, unfortunately, to achieve this, ASUS made a number of cuts. First and foremost, the build quality is definitely not as good as the likes of the Flex 5 or HP's Pavilion X360. You have a lot of cheap plastic materials. The trackpad is just one of the worst I've used on recent laptops, and the keyboard isn't a great experience either. Also, the display on the machine, as I mentioned in my review, is a mixed bag, so while you have great viewing angles and decent resolution, the color accuracy leaves a lot to be desired. Battery life is another area where this laptop falls short. At 8 hours, it's well behind a lot of its competitors, and you might find it to be shy of all-day use. But in some areas, this laptop does really well. For example, you have a nice collection of I/O ports. Additionally, you also get 12 gigabytes of RAM in this particular configuration, which is usually not the case at this price range, where you find that 8 gigabytes is kind of the standard. And the Ryzen chips, especially the 5500U, is a fantastic value. It actually pulls a lot given the fact that it's a mid-tier chip, and you can even do stuff like gaming and video editing without breaking a sweat. So if you are someone who's very intrigued by those type of features or functionality, this might be a laptop for you. But if you need a better display, better build quality, or if you're looking for just more value in terms of the trackpad and keyboard quality, there are plenty of other better machines out there. Feel free to check them out on my channel. As always, if you guys enjoyed this review, hit that like button, consider dropping a sub. It'll not only make my day, but I'm doing my absolute best to provide quality content for you guys, and I'd love to have you guys watch it if you're interested. Thanks for watching this video. Catch you in the next one. See ya.